Never waste a good crisis. And when it comes to the economic crisis, don't waste it when it can have a very positive impact.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste.
The way we're going to win over the long term is not just militarily. We've got to win over hearts and minds. And what that means is we've got to invest in countries that have no educational infrastructure and have no means for young people to get ahead. We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
Stay tuned for politics and religion.
This comes from France. France is now pushing for a genocide panel in a Paris court. Most of you know by now that there's a lot of motion out there toward putting people on trial for supposed crimes against humanity. Anytime a soldier participates in a battle anywhere, that particular soldier is now open for charges being filed against him or her concerning the violation of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide charges. Well, now then, France is considering opening a special court just for the prosecution of such crimes. Now, let's make sure that we really understand what's going on here. When the International Criminal Court was formulated back in 2008, they considered 4 crimes to be prosecutable by the International Criminal Court. And those 4 crimes were genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. Now, of the 4 crimes, there were 3 of them that immediately became prosecutable once the court opened. However, they could not agree on a definition of crimes of aggression. What the people, the prime movers behind this court, wanted was to make any military action by any nation on earth a crime of aggression unless it was specifically approved by the world government. You may be asking, well, who's the world government? How do you get that approved? It's the United Nations, the UN Security Council. Now, that's what these people have in mind. They have in mind a full-blown one world governmental system where, of course, there would be no national sovereignty left. Now, what they like to say is that nations would have to give up some of their sovereignty. That is a very deceptive term because you can't give up some of your sovereignty. You are either sovereign or you are not sovereign. To be sovereign means to be the ultimate power. If there is a power above you that can overrule you, then you are no longer sovereign, but you now have become subservient to a higher power. That's one reason people made such a big deal about President Obama bowing to the Saudi king over there. They felt like that this was a gesture on the part of our president, that he should be bowing as a gesture. He should not be bowing as a gesture to a foreign potentate of any kind, because that indicated a submitting of U.S. sovereignty to that of another regime. Now, whether it was meant that way or not, I cannot tell you. However, that's the reason for the furor over that particular action that was taken. So the International Criminal Court was designed to make sure that all nations were controlled by this international law. And the International Criminal Court was designed to rule on cases concerning the breaking of international law. Now, how this is developing, since crimes of aggression were put aside and are not being enforced today because they could not agree on a definition, there were some nations that were not ready to say, okay, I will allow the world body to determine whether my military action was a legitimate military action or not, or I will agree to submit myself for permission to invade a country and to prove that I'm doing this in self-defense before I do it. Obviously, President Bush did not do that in the 2003 invasion of Iraq. the original invasion of Iraq by President Bush Sr., there was permission granted by the UN Security Council, so that one would qualify. That's the reason there are some people today who still think that George W. Bush should be placed on trial before an international tribunal, because they really do believe that that was an illegal war. Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations at the time, said that he thought that the invasion of Iraq was an illegal war. Well, if it's illegal, that means it broke the law. If you break the law, you're a criminal, and that's the reason some people say he should be placed on trial. As a matter of fact, George W. Bush was placed on trial, a mock trial in absentia. I think this took place in Japan, and the trial proceeding was overseen by none other than former Attorney General of the U.S., Ramsey Clark, and they found Bush guilty of war crimes. Of course, none of that was ever enforced because they had no legal power to do it. But that was just an example of what you can expect to happen. In fact, once the ICC gains more and more power, and that's what's happening right now.